All right, so it was a year ago at this time when there was a lot of discussion. I don't know that there was ever necessarily tremors in the force, for lack of a better term, that Carson Beck uh, would transfer from Georgia. So here's my question: a year later, a year and a couple of seasons later, as I guess, why hasn't Carson Beck transferred from Georgia, or why did he not transfer from Georgia? Because it certainly doesn't seem like he will now. I think it's a really good question um, for a guy who it's pretty clear he will start at a lot of places. He would start at a lot of places that are not Georgia. And I got a chance to talk to Todd Monken before the Peach Bowl, and we were talking about Carson, Stetson, Brock Vandegrift, all of the quarterbacks at Georgia, and obviously Carson has played more than any other quarterback lately. Here's what he did a season ago. He played in 7 games, including some big ones, and he went 25 of 35, 26 of 35 for 310 yards, 4 touchdowns with a long of 28 yards. He ran the ball 7 times for 43 yards with his long coming against South Carolina, a 20-yard run. That was the longest of the season. Only in one game did Carson have below 67% passing. That was the Georgia Tech game where he was 1 of 2. Against Oregon, he was 5 of 6. Samford 5 of 7. Carolina 5 of 6. He did not throw a ball against Auburn. He was 8 of 11 against Vanderbilt, 1 of 2 against Tech, and 2 of 3 in the national championship game against Texas Christian. The touchdowns were against Oregon, Carolina, and then he had 2 against Vanderbilt. And I do want to focus on the Vanderbilt part just for a little bit here because that really did show what you're going to see from Carson in a season from now. Now, look, hey, first of all, make sure you're picking up Double Dogs today. It's early February. Order it now before so you don't get so backed up. 80-page look at the Dogs 2022 National Championship season. When I was writing about the Vanderbilt game, I sort of focused on Carson. The link is down below. I focused on Carson because that was a game where you're like, oh, okay. We've seen some of Carson Beck, but now we're really seeing him in action. People say, "Oh, it's Vanderbilt." I mean, that was a tougher game for Georgia than TCU, right? Um, and that also dismisses uh, the experience someone like Stetson got against UAB or Vanderbilt when he played the bulk of the 2021 Vanderbilt game up there. Was it 21? Yeah. So I think that why Carson has not transferred is a great question because, in the grand scheme of things, we've seen a huge percentage of high level quarterbacks transfer. Whether you're talking about Spencer Rattler, I mean, honestly, I mean, everybody, JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett, it's just not been something it's been something that's been totally common. Tua was going to transfer until he didn't. You had Jalen Hurts transferring, Baker Mayfield. The list is pretty long of guys who transferred. Of the guys I saw um, at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, the only guy who had not transferred was the third place guy. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. You'll have to excuse me. Oh, it was CJ Stroud. It was a pretty good quarterback. He was the only guy who had not transferred. So what's Carson getting at Georgia that allowed him, and let's be frank, his parents and people around him, the patience to stay at Georgia and continue this journey? I think it starts with Todd Monken, actually. And I think that I mean, obviously, whether it's obvious or not, I'm not sure. But Todd Monken and Carson Beck's the families have known each other for some time. So there's that is certainly part of what's going on, is that there's trust there. Secondly, uh, I think it's a very good opportunity, really more than anything else. It's a moment when it's going to be hard to recreate the situation you've got at Georgia really anywhere else in the country. And here's what I mean. We have seen now the development of quarterbacks inside of the SEC. That used to be a Lincoln Riley thing, maybe a Sark thing, but now it's happening inside the league. Very specifically, excuse me, at Georgia. You, it's hard to. I find it very challenging to argue against reality that Stetson Bennett was developed in a very big way at Georgia. He was good. No, he was good. He gave the 2017 defense, which was an excellent defense, all sorts of trouble. Uh, and he he got a lot better, Stetson Bennett, from 20 to 21, and then from 21 to 22, he certainly got a lot better. There wasn't a bunch of hero ball and all this. Stetson got better, and that was because of development. Carson Beck was in a competition with Stetson Bennett to start the UAB game in 2021. And if you talk to Todd Monken, Stetson Bennett outplayed him that week, and it was evident who should start. It was close, obviously, or they wouldn't have had a competition, but it was evident who was going to play, and that was Stetson. Who was going to start? It was Stetson. And then Stetson took it and ran with things. Um, it's been a probably tough couple years for Carson, going from really competing in a way for the 2020 starting position to and coming into 21 positioned to be the number two player, and then Daniels gets hurt and he's not the starter. We have not heard a peep of negativity. Um, really, we haven't. And this is an abnormal quarterback tale coming off of the most abnormal one maybe in the history of the world, which is Stetson Bennett's story. This is a different story. This is a story of I would imagine belief in oneself, belief in the system of preparedness at Georgia, the way Georgia has won has been significant. It's given Carson the capability of competing against extremely good players while he's not been playing. But people want to play. I mean, guys want to play. It's tough to. I can speak from experience here. It's tough to do the 5:30 wake up call for the early morning conditioning, and then you don't play a lot or play at all. In Carson's case, he played 7 games, but he, played sparingly. He played about a game's worth of games in a 15-game season. Now, if Carson Beck goes 26 for 35 on average for 310 yards and 4 touchdowns on average, all of that, he will win the Heisman Trophy. Okay, so we know that that's probably not what's going to happen in terms of the the lethal way in which he carved up Oregon, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. It's probably not going to be like that all season long. He's going to have difficulties. And the thing that we don't know about Carson that we do know about other folks, or that, well, we learned about Stetson Bennett is what happens when the critical moment occurs. We don't know that with Carson, and we didn't know that with Stetson. We didn't know that with JT either. And JT had a heck of a Peach Bowl. He didn't play well in that Peach Bowl in 20. Well, it was a 21 Peach Bowl, I guess, but he didn't play well against Cincinnati. But he did it when he had to. Is that the Carson Beck we're going to see? I don't know. I don't know. But the broad strokes look good.